Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep into some words that have echoed through millennia.
Okay.
We're talking about the book of Deuteronomy, specifically those pivotal chapters,
Okay.
4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
You know, the ones where Moses lays down the law,
Right.
literally for the Israelites,
Literally.
on the cusp of the promised land.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate pep talk
Yeah,
mixed with a history lesson and a legally binding contract all rolled into one.
right. And you know me, I always wonder, why does this ancient text still resonate? What can we, thousands of years later, learn from these laws,
Right.
warnings,
Yeah.
and promises?
Yeah.
To understand that,
Okay.
you've got to rewind a bit. Imagine you're an Israelite
Okay.
who spent a lifetime
Yeah.
wandering the desert, and now finally the promised land is within reach.
Yeah. And leading them is Moses, a figure who's guided them,
Right.
spoken directly to God on their behalf.
Oh, wow.
He's more than just a leader. He's a symbol of their covenant with God.
Okay, quick pause. Covenant. That's a weighty word. But for anyone who needs a refresher, it's like the most serious, unbreakable promise you can make.
Exactly. It's a sacred bond, and for the Israelites, their covenant with God meant everything.
Wow.
It defined their identity, their purpose, their very existence.
Right.
And in Deuteronomy, Moses is essentially saying, this covenant, this isn't just my deal with God. This is your inheritance. This is who you are.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We're
Right.
talking about a new generation, many of whom didn't personally experience the Exodus, the plagues,
Right.
the splitting of the Red Sea.
Yeah, they weren't there.
They hadn't stood at the foot of Mount Sinai when those 10 commandments boomed out.
So imagine the challenge.
Yeah.
Making those events, that history, feel real and relevant to a generation that didn't live through it.
Wow.
That's why Moses reiterates those 10 commandments in Deuteronomy 5.
Yeah.
It's not just a reminder, it's a recommitment ceremony for a whole new generation.
It's like, hey, remember all that epic stuff your parents and grandparents told you about? It's time to make it your own.
Exactly.
And speaking of remembering, Deuteronomy hammers home the importance of memory.
Yes.
Like in chapter 4, verse 9,
Okay.
and chapter 6, verses 7 through 9.
Yes.
It's almost an obsession, this idea of never forget.
Because forgetting in their context wasn't just about hazy memories. It was about losing their identity, their connection to God, to their very purpose.
Right.
They had to remember where they came from to understand where they were going and what was expected of them.
So how did they keep these stories and laws alive? I mean, no Instagram back then, right?
Think back to a time before the printing press.
Yeah.
Their history, their laws, it was all passed down orally.
Right.
Grandparents telling stories around the fire.
Yeah.
Parents reciting laws to their children. It was woven into the fabric of their daily lives.
It's like their version of a podcast, but way more interactive.
Exactly. But they went beyond storytelling.
Okay.
Deuteronomy 6.8 to 9 talks about making the law tangible.
Okay.
Binding it on their hands, wearing it on their foreheads, inscribing it on their doorpost. These weren't just decorations, they were physical reminders.
Okay.
Sparking conversation and keeping the covenant at the forefront of their minds.
Like a constant nudge to stay on track.
Yes.
A little like those vision boards people use today.
Right.
Speaking of staying on track,
Okay.
let's get into the actual instructions.
Let's do it.
No idols, honoring parents, keeping the Sabbath holy.
The big ones.
These aren't just suggestions.
Right.
They're the pillars of their existence.
Absolutely. And each one, when you dig deeper, reveals layers of meaning that go beyond the surface level.
All right, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Starting with no idols. Sounds simple enough, right?
Sure.
But knowing what we know about the ancient world, it gets a bit more complex.
It does. You see, back then, every culture had its own set of gods, its own rituals, its own way of understanding the universe. For the Israelites, surrounded by these other nations, the temptation to blend in, to adopt those local customs must have been enormous.
So it's about more than just statues.
Right.
It's about staying true to your own beliefs, your own identity.
Absolutely.
Even when it's hard, even when you're surrounded by different ways of thinking.
Exactly. And remember, the Israelites believed that theirs was a jealous God. A God who demanded their exclusive devotion.
Right.
Every carved image, every foreign ritual was a potential threat to that unique relationship.
It makes you think about what our modern day idols might be, doesn't it?
It does.
What are the things we're tempted to put before our values or commitments?
Right.
But we'll come back to that later.
Okay.
Let's move on to another big one, honoring parents.
Yeah.
It's interesting how this commandment, in some ways, feels even more relevant today
I know.
in a time when respect for authority seems to be waning.
It's a timeless principle, really.
Yeah.
Think about it in a world without social safety nets,
Right.
without retirement plans.
Yeah.
Honoring your parents wasn't just good manners. It was essential for survival.
Wow.
It ensured that the elderly were cared for, that wisdom was passed down, that society remained stable.
It also speaks to the idea of legacy, right?
Yeah.
Honoring the sacrifices those before you made,
Yes.
recognizing that you stand on their shoulders.
Precisely. It's acknowledging that you're part of something larger than yourself.
Right.
A chain that stretches back generations and will continue long after you're gone. Wow.
And that brings us to a commandment that even today feels radical.
Okay.
Keeping the Sabbath holy.
Okay.
Imagine a world obsessed with work,
Right.
where rest is a luxury few can afford.
Okay.
Now imagine carving out an entire day every week dedicated solely to rest.
Whoa. It's like they invented the weekend.
Yeah.
But seriously, a day of rest for everyone.
You know,
Even slaves and animals.
Yes.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept for the ancient world.
it was a revolutionary act.
Wow.
Remember, the Israelites had just escaped a life of slavery in Egypt,
Right.
a life defined by endless toil and oppression.
Okay.
The Sabbath was a powerful symbol of their liberation,
Right.
a reminder that they were no longer defined by their labor, but by their relationship with God.
And it wasn't just about physical rest, was it?
Yeah.
It was about mental and spiritual renewal, too. Absolutely.
Okay.
It was a time to gather with family and community, to reflect, to reconnect with what truly mattered.
Right.
In a way, it was a weekly reset button,
Wow.
reminding them of their priorities and their place in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Now, while Deuteronomy offers a vision of blessings and abundance, it's also very clear about the consequences of straying from the path.
Yeah. It's like that old saying, every action has a reaction. And Deuteronomy doesn't shy away from laying out the potential consequences
Right.
of disobedience.
It's true. Deuteronomy 4 paints a stark picture of what happens if they turn away from the covenant exile suffering,
Right.
even the potential loss of their homeland. But it's important to note these warnings aren't meant to instill fear.
Right.
They're more like cautionary tales.
Yeah.
A reminder that choices have consequences.
Yeah. It's like a parent saying, look, I'm not trying to scare you,
Right.
but I need you to understand the dangers so you can make wise decisions.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Deuteronomy acknowledges the cyclical nature of human behavior. Look at chapter 4, verses 29 through 31.
Okay.
It describes this pattern of forgetting suffering, remembering, and returning to God.
Right.
It's a cycle that's echoed throughout history, wouldn't you say?
It's definitely relatable.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes, stray from what we know is right,
Yeah.
face the consequences.
Mm.
But there's always that chance to turn back,
Right.
to remember to choose a different path.
And that's the beauty of Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when we falter, even when we forget, that covenant, that sacred promise, it remains. God's faithfulness, his love for his people, it endures through every generation.
It's a powerful message of hope even amidst the warnings.
Yeah, it is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Deuteronomy, what's the biggest takeaway? What can we in our modern world glean from these ancient laws and stories?
I think Deuteronomy challenges us to consider the foundations of our own lives.
Okay.
What are the principles we hold dear?
Yeah.
What values guide our decisions, our relationships? Just like those physical reminders the Israelites used,
Right.
what can we do to keep those values at the forefront of our minds
Right.
in the midst of a busy, often chaotic world?
It's a call to live intentionally with purpose, remembering the lessons of the past as we navigate the present and build towards the future.
Absolutely.
And perhaps just as importantly, it's a reminder that we're part of something larger than ourselves, a story that began long before us and will continue long after we're gone.
A legacy
Wow.
woven into the very fabric of who we are.
And on that note,
Yes.
we'll leave you with this question. What will your legacy be? What will you choose to remember? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.